the family, starting with running mother's business and trying to set up something of our own. And it's been like that for a while. Studies, I did engineering in my years in Nigeria, came here, came to the UK, studied business admin and marketing in masters. Um, but in terms of my lifestyle, I don't think I think I worked for about a year combined. So I've been in business, even in this country, setting up colleges. If you see my WhatsApp page, you will say Educations. So I was in education management for over a decade. That was what actually brought me to this country. And then moving on to other businesses, and I tried to drizzle into so many things why that was going on, because that was time based, because when students are not, they will be recruiting, but it gives me time to do so many other things,
No,
and to venture into other businesses. And I think I accumulate certain discipline and experiences, that period. So
perfect. Barakallah feek.
I
Alhamdulillah. It was better than the one line you gave me earlier. Alhamdulillah. So people have a bit more of a background or
yeah.
context when we start delving into the topic today. For those who just joined, we are today. This is about episode 4 of our Muslims in Business series. Alhamdulillah. Today the topic is ethics in business, what Muslims can contribute to society, and I guess one of the primary drivers for us delving into this topic is because often business is seen as a zero-sum game where there's winners and losers, right? And as Muslims, often this kind of ethos doesn't sit kindly with us. Or as Muslims, we believe actually perhaps business can be a positive sum game where everyone can be a winner, inshallah. So I thought it would be nice and important for us to have brothers who are in the space of business, for them to have a discussion, an open discussion. Inshallah, we hope that the Q&A begins in the chat box as well, so we can pose those questions to our speakers as we go along. But this is perhaps the primary driver. As Muslims, how can we bring our culture, our principles to this area of business in order to make it a more enriched environment, not just for Muslims, for us to be better, but also for wider society. So before we jump into the topic at hand, I'm going to also give our brother Abdul Samil the opportunity to give a brief introduction of himself to everyone on the call.
آه، آه، إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أيها الإخوة في الدين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
My brief bio that Taufik read out earlier, I think kind of summarizes where my experiences and what I'm all about. As I said rightly, I'm a finance professional, and I can call myself a financial advisor and investment specialist as well. Whilst my brother, Brother Abdurafi, is an entrepreneur, I leave that title to him. I don't think I qualify for that title, but I come at it from another angle. I come at it from when you have that dream, how do you actualize it? How do you actualize it? Be it from a capital raising, how do you capitalize an entrepreneur? How do you an entrepreneurial dream from a financial advisory, structuring, governance? That's where I come in as a finance professional, as well as an investment specialist. I think that suffices. Suffice to say that I'm a trained chartered accountant as well. But that's way back now. I like to not use that title as much. I like to just make it as broad as possible and just say I'm a finance professional, and you know what that encompasses. I hope that enough as a intro.
No. Perfect. Thank you very much. So we're going to jump straight into the topic now. So my first question is that, given your experience, we always hear about this mantra that you have to be ruthless in business to succeed. I want to know to what extent you agree with this statement, and how can Muslims reconcile their ethics with this sort of mantra? So inshallah, I'm going to give the floor to Brother Abdul Rafi first, and then we'll pass it back and forth from there. Bismillah.
I saw that earlier and I was a bit. It's one of the statements that actually takes me back and say, what does that mean? What does ruthlessness actually mean? Are you saying you need to be fraudulent? If I might use that word. Ruthlessness is not in our culture, but we can be assertive, we can be just, and we should be fair. Not even can, we should be fair, we should be just. And most often we should be assertive and really understand why we are doing certain things. Ethics generally is the core of our religion. The center of our religion is the essence of our religion is to be morally upright. And so the word ruthlessness in the concept that we often hear is not in mantra, it is not in our book. Although, and I don't know if that academically it might mean something, but in business, when people start talking about being ruthless, it means that they want you to be to quote to be ahead of somebody, or to be ahead of your competitor in an unlawful way, or to take advantage of a situation. So is it part of our ethics? No. Is it part of what we should be living? No. What we should be providing and what we try to provide is alternative to being ruthless, is to be kind, to be just, and to have people to believe and trust in us. We as Muslims, we are trustees of Allah on earth, and that should give us.
Both of them.
Somebody needs to mute.
Yeah, 1 second. Can I ask you all, if you're not one of the speakers, to go on mute, inshallah? Sorry about that.
Yeah. So we as trustees of Allah should be championing the fairness in not only in business and in our everyday life.
Mhm.
One of the books I was reading it says that there's no, and we know that there's no place Allah mentioned and call us a believer, and we're not followed by an action in the Ladina Amanu wa Aminu Salia. That's and the essence of our life is to worship Allah, but not in isolation. Worship Him through everything that we do. So ruthlessness, as far as I know, as I understood it in the business world, is not something that I want to be associated with. Although maybe Brother Lawan might have all the understanding of it in the professional setting, especially in the financial one. For us, we have to be just and fair.
No, Perfect. Barakallahu Feek. Before I pass over the mic, I want to probe and push back a little. So, do you feel like fairness and being ruthless are mutually exclusive in that you can't achieve fairness if you are going to be ruthless? Or would you agree that there are elements in which you have to be ruthless, or you can be ruthless in order to be successful, but also elements in which you perhaps show a bit more of this element of fairness and justice? Is it a case of there's no room for being ruthless at all? Is that what you're proposing?
Okay, so when you're dealing with people, I think that's another aspect of being ruthless. People will say, you can't take that again from a staff or from a customer that is continuously being rude or deceptive. They want you to be ruthless and challenge that attitude or that character by being by acing them or by just putting them on one side. Even with that, we need to treat people with a bit of caution. I've been told several times that I'm very harsh with my words. I'm very, but that doesn't mean that I want to be ruthless in that manner. So we can conceptualize what you mean by ruthlessness. But if you have to be assertive and you have to stand on your foot and to gain what is right, then go for it. That's not being ruthless to me. And I think the word is maybe misused or have other connotation in the business world. But for me, yes, I want to be other side of being ruthless. I always try to be on the other side of the book, not the one that is being described around. And
Perfect.
I hope I'm right.
Perfect. Thank you. So over to you, Madam Samil. Same question. So, and for those who just joined, the question was, we hear a lot in business this mantra that you need to be ruthless in order to be successful. So to what extent do you agree with this mantra, and how can a Muslim reconcile this with their own ethics?
Jazakallah khair. Tawfiq, I think the question is there's not a binary answer to the question. It's not yes or no. It's quite contextual, depending on the situation, depending on the variables at play. I operate in an industry where you hear the word dog eat dog. But even at that does not take away your values and your moral compass. And the limit is around understanding the language, understanding the dynamics of the industry or the variables that you operate in, and how can you be ruthless if ruthlessness means being assertive, being confident, being on top of your game, being the go-to person, being outspoken while still maintaining your values as a Muslim, as prescribed by the Deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. But before I go into the question, I want to take us a step back, if I may, just to set the context, because we're talking about ethics and business ethics. Before we delve into it, if I may just share my video for one minute. My screen, I beg your pardon.
Yep, we can see.
See my screen, thank you. Now, I just want to play a very short video, and it's a 30-second video. And this video, I want you to look at the video with the lens of ethics as we talk about it. As I said, it's a 30-second video. And as you seeing this video, just reflect and put yourself in the shoes of the donkeys. There are 4 donkeys in the video. I'm not equating us or human beings to donkeys at all. We're far more sophisticated and far more advanced than donkeys. But there's just a lot of relevant information to take away as we go into this subject. So what I ask of you in the next 30 seconds is please just watch the video and take there's no right or wrong, and take some takeaways from it.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but
Skipping.
it's coming through in stills. It's not, the video is not playing smoothly.
Oh, my apologies. Is it now or not?
Nah, still not.
Okay, 1 second. Do it in a different way. Now?
So now we can see your PowerPoint. We can't see, you can see the slide earlier, the earlier slide. So, oh, you who believe, fair Allah, what you say. No.
Can you see my screen or no?
No, I think you've stopped sharing your screen now.
Okay, that's fine. So it's good now. So
Let's give it one more try.
Yeah, the different one.
Yeah, slightly different video. Khair, let's have you work on that in the background, inshallah, while we look a bit more into the topic. Inshallah, I'll swing back to you once you have the video set up, inshallah. So you can bring us back there. So one clear.
I think I've got it now.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah. Apologies. Technology.
Okay.
So we can't see it. It's still on the previous page. Okay, it's moved over now.
Can you see it or no?
We can see, but it's
skipping.
Yeah, it's skipping. It's not coming through as smoothly, inshallah.
Right.
Yeah, what we'll do, inshallah, is
That's
that we'll circulate the video afterwards, inshallah, so people can
let
reflect
me take a step back and tell you the point I'm trying to make. In the video, you had 4 donkeys, and the donkeys, there is an established rule. The first donkey went through the other, the second went through the other, and the third donkey found a way to get the other out of the way, and went through it, and then the fourth one followed exactly what the third donkey did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to put that video in a context of ethics, and to juxtapose that with, if you are the first donkey that have gone through the rules and you follow the established protocol, and the second donkey as well has done exactly the same thing. The third one, for some reason, found a way to circumvent the rule, and you can, in some instances, you can call that you're being smart. If you were the first or second, what would you say? Would you feel bad? Would you say it's unethical what the third one has done? If you're the fourth one, would you have called it out and say, you know what, you shouldn't have done that, it's not the right thing? So I wanted to put the video in the context of ethics, and to drive home the point that is really about what's ethically and morally right versus what's morally wrong when you in the I need to stop this.
Hello? No, we can still hear you, inshallah. Khair. So just to round up this topic on ruthlessness, it sounds like the consensus is that, well, it's context specific. If you mean by in business, in order to be successful, you need to be ruthless. We're talking about you need to be assertive. You need to be somebody who sticks to their plans, somebody who, let's say, is determined, etc. But these connotations of ruthlessness, yes. But when it comes to humans, actually, it's to be patient, to be gentle, even perhaps when your right is being infringed upon, whether it's a customer, whether it's an employee, in order to for you to live up to your principles, being ruthless in those situations perhaps isn't consistent. I think that's the message that we're hearing on both sides. So on this topic, especially from a business perspective, we have this concept in Islam called a trust or amana. So let's say you're going into business with somebody, they've given you an amount of money in order that they like what you're doing and they want to invest. Today, when it comes to people, I guess, taking funds from other people in order to start businesses, there's also, especially as Muslims, there's often a bit of reluctance because we understand the gravity of this trust. But on the flip side, we do have some people who kind of operate by the principle of, well, it's business, you know, you can win and lose your money. So khair, I've got to do what I can with the money. So when it comes to this concept of trust and amana, from your own personal experiences, how do you try to achieve the right balance? Because as entrepreneurs, you do need to take certain risks. When it's your own money, you're probably more comfortable taking some risks than other risks. When you're pooling other people's money, then the risk appetite might change, right? So I'm wondering if you can give us some insight on how you achieve that balance. Let's start with Brother Abu Rafi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wow, that's actually a reality, and that's what we struggle with almost every day, within yourself, in the family, friends, and for all that want to find a way to have a Muslim economy as well. That's what we are faced with. How do we balance these? I think that is for me as a practitioner. I'm out there dealing with people every day. I can only talk about the trust of me running businesses with others, and running businesses with friends and family. How do we get the balance right? I think Brother Lawal might be in the best position to advise, because that is his profession. But the first thing we need to establish here is that we need to go back, and I think that's what Brother Lawal was trying to do, to understand these ethics in Islam, the notion of how do we become morally upright, start from understanding of Tawheed itself. And that's the implication of Tawheed in our life. How do we perceive Allah? What do we take Allah for? How do we get our own inspiration of who Allah is? These are fundamental and divine message that Islam brought to us. And then after that, we know that the worshiping of Allah is incumbent on us. These are foundation for us to be trustworthy. These are foundation for us to understand the amana on us. And in fact, we ourselves, human, not even Muslim, human, we are the trustee of Allah on earth. If we understand that as an implication of our Tawheed, then dealing with people will become a lot easier. Dealing with people, not only people, even other living creatures that we have on earth. So if we have that understanding, and we are on a Muslim platform, everybody should have that basic of understanding of what Islam, who Allah is, and the consciousness of Allah in our dealings will prevail in us. How do we now balance it with everyday and transaction that will anyway? And the concept of worship should not be secluded from the spiritual and other things that we do. What we find in our life is that we find a way to separate our spirituality and our everyday life from in a separate, okay, I'm a Muslim, but I can do certain things this way. No, it's contrary to the teaching of Tawhid itself. What we need, what we have to, is to find a way to know that worshiping Allah it involves everything that we do on a daily basis, and that will help us understand how we treat people going forward. So if we have that consciousness, if we have that belief, and we know that everything that is put on us is an amana, is a thought on us, then we will kindly use it. Even our own money, even our own body deserves something from us. These things we take it with levity. We take it like, oh, no, it doesn't matter now. But we are more. We should be more conscious of it. I find it very difficult to. I'll give you an example. A brother called me and said, "Hey, Aki, you call me AJ. You ain't done." Said, okay, alhamdulillah, it's fine. And he's somebody that I talked to. I said, oh, what's going on with the shop? But I said, yeah, the shop is there, but we're doing quite well. Alhamdulillah, it's going on. And oh, what's going on? I said, you know what? COVID brought another opportunity for us, and we started. Alhamdulillah, that brought back in ways that are it's not even imaginable. So COVID, they said yes, COVID changed a lot of things, especially for us in the food business. I said, okay, I want to invest. Please, if something, just take from me. My brother, I don't really need that money. It's not something that I need. But the brother has been on my case for years. What do I do? Turn him down? Again, we have to tell him that the COVID brought something in. So I was forced to accept. And I said, okay, I have an agreement, sign these, and I will take care of it. But what I did was to take the minimum I can take from him and say, okay, we'll invest this in this for you, and you will take your return a certain date, inshallah, if everything goes well. And he didn't call me for his profit. So he sent me a message a month after when it was due. And he said, Subhanallah, why didn't you call me? And he said something that was very beautiful to me. I know you're busy and it's nothing to you, just a reminder that I'm still on this thing. And that took me back. Wow. So we are beginning to understand the concept of brotherhood and trustworthiness in our culture, in our lives now. We're beginning to maybe 10 years ago, we might not find out. The next thing you hear is from somebody that somebody took money from you, and then you'll be like, come on, I took it on the basis. I didn't remember. You should have called me, but it will have been from third party. So it's something that we need to it's a conscious mind, and realizing that people have other things that they're dealing with. Even if you are going to get your hands burnt, it doesn't matter. Still trust your brother to work for you and give you the best chance in life as little as it can be. So, and on our side as well, as the business people, to have the consciousness that these people are trusting you with what they are not there, but Allah is witness. If you misplace their trust, you might not come back to it. I was saying something to you earlier, and I like what you've done with it, which is more interactive now, about getting. You said something about risk appetite. Brilliant. I don't think I have. For me, I doesn't into anything. I'm not a risk person. So I have a brother that will call and say, "Hey, listen to this jargon. So tell me what you think about it tomorrow." Everything is up. I see an opportunity in everything, and but I realize that that's not good for me. So I have somebody who analyze that for me. So I said, I'll give it. And most of the time, I found myself in a situation where I'm losing money by trusting people. Has that changed me yet? No. But you know what? Allah has a way of rewarding you when you are down. Allah will reward you for the consciousness and the trust that you put on those people, even if they wrong you. So I find it easy to trust anybody. As far as we've done what is right, we have an agreement, and think, okay, fine, we can move on. And if things goes bad out of me being stupid or being naive, whichever way you want to talk about, call it, I've been called names and say, oh, you've been stupid. I'm fine. It's fine. But Allah you will find solace in Allah, you find that comfort in Him, and He will reward you in multiple. And that I found throughout. I have a simple example.
Before that, inshallah, keep a hold of the example.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't want to interrupt you because, alhamdulillah, you did a great job of setting the scene as to linking it back to one's spirituality. It's not isolated. How you you can see it as an act of worship, actually, how you behave in business. And the example you gave about actually a brother who you didn't quite need his money, but you thought, why do I need to be monopolistic about this? He wants to enjoy from what Allah has blessed me with, and you decided to, alhamdulillah, let's make this a positive sum game and not a zero sum game. Alhamdulillah, it's great to see those examples. But Samil, off the back of anything that's been said, or also just kind of rooting back to that initial question around the concept of amana in Islam, and how as Muslims we ought to inculcate this into our lives, or how do we achieve the balance, for instance. What are your thoughts on the topic?
No, I think the brother did justice to it, but I would add few things. The first is, when you talk about amana, this is a commandment of Allah Azza wa Jal. So when someone put their amana in you, their trust in you, if you break that trust, it's not just about that person. You being sinful. So it's very deeply rooted in our spirituality, as you said. But I'll take it beyond that. I would say even outside of the spiritual realm, being trustworthy or having the concept of trustworthiness is part of the fabrics of business, and this is not exclusive to Islam. All the world, all the Western world, they have a massive powers of code of ethics, and being trustworthy is always a part of it. Now, the other thing I was going to say on this is that yes, it's one thing to be believing in the trustworthiness of your brother, but what I always encourage people to do is still follow the path of good business ethics, which is deeply rooted in both conventional business ethics as well as Islamic business ethics. So for instance, I wouldn't say because I trust a brother, and you would enter into a business transaction or without necessarily having the right agreement in place. Because by doing so, even though you're doing it based on trust and based on your tawakkul in Allah, that you're establishing a trust and you helping a brother, you're actually being sinful because you're going against the direct injunction of Allah Azza wa Jal, which He says when there is a transaction, you must scribe it, you must have a witness, and Allah goes on and on in Surah Al-Baqarah. Actually, just to buttress this point, the longest verse in the Quran talks about this, the business, how the business should be constructed. So the point I'm making is, yes, it's good to have the amount to trust your brother, to be trusting, but every time you break the rules of business ethic, there's always something to be paid. It's not only that you're being sinful, you would actually, in most cases, you would always the repercussion of it. Maybe you fall out from your brother, things that you should have done ahead, you didn't do it on time. I think in business world, there's one quote about trust that I find really, really fascinating, and the quote is about when you put if your client or your partner has a problem with trust, a signed contract may not be enough to protect you from an expensive litigation. What that is saying is, yes, even if you write it down and you still have to, the element of trust, is important in the fabrics of business and good business practices. Wallahu a'lam.
Barakallahu feek. Alhamdulillah. Thanks. Thank you both for your contributions on that. So I'm going to come back to you, Brother Samil, for the next two questions that I want you to take together. So one is that there's this caricature that many of us are from a Nigerian background, that actually Muslims in Nigeria, we are people who are, we lack the hustling spirit, people who are waiting for handouts, perhaps. Well, do you think that this is a fair assessment? If in part it is true, where do you think we've got it wrong? There's the feeling that perhaps we're a bit lazy. And where do you think we are getting things right? And the second question, which is a bit different, but also just relates back home, is that doing business with family, is it something that, or what would you say? I mean, you've given your advice around contracts, etc. But with family, what, I guess, additional steps do you need to take when or if you decide to go down this route? Do you perhaps need to just, in your mind, see it as sadaqah, that you're doing business, but if you don't see anything in return, khalas, is sadaqah? Like, what advice can you give people with regards to that topic of business with family? And then the earlier question was around, is it fair, this caricature of the Nigerian Muslim as lazy, without the hustling spirit, person looking for a handout? So inshallah, khair, over to you.
I'll take the second question first, because it's kind of intertwined with the subject that we were talking about before this. doing business with family, I think is encouraged. It's is part of the social fabric um, of why we are families. And if you cannot do business with your brother or your family, then there's something fundamentally wrong. But I have some principles when it comes to doing business with family. I think, and I always go back to these because if you don't put those checklists in place, what you're trying to avoid, i.e., let's say you're being timid and say, okay, Brother Taufik is my brother. He came to me and say, at the semi, I need X pounds. I want to do this business. And I say, you know what? I cannot say no to Brother Taufik. I just have to give him the money. On the one hand, you have protected that family, that reliance, so to speak. But on the other hand, what you might have done a bit unconsciously could be you just push forward call it a disagreement, call it a problem that you could have confronted there and then. Let me elaborate a bit more. What I'm saying specifically is, if Brother Taufik comes to me and say, you know what, I want to build a power station tomorrow, and here I need, 500 million USD, for instance, it's just hypothetical numbers. I have to go back and say, what competence does Brother Taufik has, irrespective of whether or not he's my brother, or, in establishing that kind of business and making a success of it. As I said, and I always say this to people, nobody brings skills from anywhere, even if he does not have that competence. Do I have the conviction that he's working on building that competence, right? Is he attending courses? Is he, taking an internship to build that capability to be able to say, I want to go into business? What I say to people that are very close to me is I intentionally avoid making investment or business partnership based on emotions. Because every so often, every time you do that, there's always something that that could have been averted, which you always come back to bite you. The second is, not only are you going to establish whether or not my brother has the competence to make success of that business proposal. The second thing is, what's your risk appetite yourself as an individual? What can you afford to lose that would not spoil your brotherhood with your brother? For instance, different people has different risk appetite. Some people, their risk appetite is very, very high, irrespective of you bring my brother. When I give you that 20 pounds or 20,000 pounds, I want to have a markup when you give it back to me. I don't want to lose the capital, and I want to return. Other people, they have maybe just a medium risk appetite. Okay, you know what? I'm giving him 20K. Maybe if he loses 10 of that, I'm okay. And we can play with others as low. They just don't want to go into that terrain at all. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is the Islamic injunction of being your brother's keepers and building that brotherhood and establishing trust and building an ecosystem whereby everyone is thriving. It's not just about you. It's about whatever investment the brother makes and the advancement he makes in it. You are creating an ecosystem that's going to be self-sustaining within the brotherhood community. But whilst doing that, please and always please, the checklist, the necessary checks that you should do, you must not throw it out of the window, because every time you do it, you are actually unconsciously, you're actually pushing forward a problem that you could avert. That's my answer to the first question. In terms of the second question, around whether or not Nigerian Muslims are lazy. I'm not. Is that the question? Is that the first question?
Less of that is that there is the caricature. We know caricatures are exaggerations, but is there an element of truth to it? And if there is, what can we do to address it? If there's not, what can we do to address the perception? Because sometimes perception is reality. We might not be invited to the table because people have the perception that this one, if we give him something to do, he's not going to do it. That sort of thing.
Sure. I think it depends on the context. I would not say yes and I will not say no. And let me give you 2 examples. Most Nigerians that I've known, irrespective of whether or not they're Muslims, or particularly when they're Muslim, when they are dealing with you about their money, things that they have a stake in, that they could potentially lose.
1 second, Sheikh. Okay, yeah, he's on mute now. Thank you.
Now, when they're dealing with you about something that they have a stake in, right? They do not come across as, lacking that hustling spirit, because they have a stake. There's a skin in the game. There's something to be. And wallahi, you would be surprised, when the ships are down, some brothers would even throw all the decorum out of the window because there's a stake, there's something for them, there's something innate for them. Now, let me take that thought a bit further. When we're now talking about Isholon, as the Yorubas will call it, a charitable commitment, or let's say we want to build a house for Allah Azza wa Jalla. There's that sense of, okay, we're a lot more emotional about it, as opposed to more dogged and more stringent and more structured about it, so to speak. And let me give an example to explain what I mean. So you have a project to build a house of Allah, and all you go about doing is saying, people, please, contribute ABC for this project. In most cases, you seldom take the step back to actually understand what do you need to make that project a success. If it's a work of Allah. If it's your own house that you're trying to build, you won't do that. You would take the step back and say, you know what? How am I going to have the right professionals around to make this work a success? And I'm making this point specifically because in most cases where you have a work of Allah to be done and it's dragging, people are not committed to it, it's because of that body language of you're not coming at it with all sense of seriousness. You're not coming at it as if something goes wrong, or if the ships are down, what are the consequences? So I can understand why that perception is out there. And again, I'm trying not to generalize, but I think as a community, if we do some introspection, there is an opportunity for improvement. We can improve on our disposition to Allah's work. When it comes to Allah's work, we need to take it a lot more professionally and with a lot of clear objective and accountability, because what that does is it reinforces that confidence. It reinforces that capacity for people to be carried along with the project. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
Barakallahu feek. All right, then I'm conscious of time. So, Brother Abdul Rafi, I'm going to ask you to touch on those topics, inshallah, but actually focus more on the next question. If you can limit it to 5 minutes, inshallah, and then we'll get closing remarks from Brother Abdul Samil, and then we open it for Q&A. But the additional question I want you to add on to the previous two is one around balancing the concept of tawakkul Allah, so reliance and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also with tying one's camel. But sometimes some people have a poor balance when it comes to that. They raise their hands to Allah and have that yaqeen that Allah is going to deliver for them, but often they're going to sit down on their bed and not do anything in order to actualize their plan. So how can what advice do you have in order to achieve the balance on that? And inshallah, you can also touch on the other two questions. I think you already touched around doing business with friends and family, so perhaps less of that. But yeah, this question on tawakkul, if you can limit it to 5 minutes as well, inshallah, that'll be great.
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, so I happen to have a business in Nigeria with my brother. That is functioning. Does that mean we don't have our problem? Yeah, we do. I find him to relax sometimes. And come on, guys, what are you doing? What's going on here, there? But there's something about that, which is the social responsibility for us here, and that whenever we can and however we can to support the people back there with our time, with our knowledge and skill, and not to throw all the caution away, but to give them that opportunity. Most people in Nigeria are just looking for that opportunity. I found some amazing people to work with in Nigeria. And I find I'm always in Nigeria these days, and they keep asking me, "What do you guys?" I just love working with these guys. It's amazing, and these concept of, well, they just and then they give them a handout. Yes, it's out there. You can't say that's not. But to find people that I don't know how to. I want to speak Yoruba now. My Yoruba adage is coming. You follow your peers. Yeah, that's true. So if you're that type of person as well, you find the people that will just be lagging around. So find people that are going to work with you, work for you, and you can all achieve the same thing. So for me, it's a social responsibility on us, especially the Muslims in the Western world, to support the people back home. Give them something to work for, and instead of give them that handout, give them something, even if you know. Use Abiola's.
We can still hear you, but I think we lost the sound from the headset.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you now. Perfect.
Okay. That I always, and this is one of my mentor in business, that some of these businesses MQ had then didn't survive because it was more of a social contribution to the society. It's not every time that you're going to make money as a businessman, but because you are trying to build a just and balanced society for people to have that opportunity. And many people will have worked with Concord and other investments of Abiola, will have gone into other walks of life and become something. So the concept of having profit from every investment is something that personally I frowned at, because we're throwing something out of what Allah has commanded. It can be your zakat, it can be your sadaqah. So anyway, not to dwell on that. And brother, I kept calling brother Lawal, and he set it up quite nicely for us. Your second question is about remind me, please.
Tawakkul and
tying one tawakkul and then it's something that I always say that it's actually in Yoruba community that you find the and that saying that well, I've done what I could, and yes, that's what it should be. Do what you can, but do it rightly. It's not what you can by sitting out in the morning and not planning your day, and just sitting around and not doing anything because you think, Allah is sufficient. but He asks us to go out there and balance it with what we can. And after our deed, after our action, after everything, then we leave it in the hands of Allah to take care of the rest. And then we can sit down and say, "Oh Allah, I've done what I could." Yeah. It takes me back to my example last time that I said Allah will reward you if you have gone out on a good intention. I had somebody, it took money from us to republish a place, and he didn't do the job. I took 20 grand, and what we saw was almost like 5K job, and he ran away. And it was a project that I needed to complete. And I brought it to Rama in a way that I wasn't even thinking of. Allah reward us even if we have, if you can do everything and you still get burned. And that is business for you. You cannot be you cannot be so sure of what will be the outcome. Allah has that, and it's not for you. It's not for you to start thinking of what it will be or what it will be like. But it will do what is basic, what is fine. Would put all the structure and all the analyses, like brother like what was saying. You put everything in place, and you put your trust in Allah, not the other way around. You put your trust in Allah and do nothing. No.
Before we pass over to Brother Tamil, how would you summarize your advice for those people on the call when it comes to them approaching this topic of business ethics, but maybe just top takeaways from the fact that by participating in this, you've been able to reflect on this topic, and you probably have re-engaged with some content. So what would you say is the key takeaway that they should take from this session? But Abdurafi first, and then we'll end with Samir.
One, that we take these as an act of worship. We cannot separate our business life from our spiritual life. In fact, we should be open and willing to find Allah's Rahman in our dealings with people in business world. And the second one is that the trust, the amana on us, we should at least walk in line with what Allah has guided us on. Putting the right thing in place, like the injunction of the Holy Quran in terms of contract, making sure that you have everything in place. And on trustworthiness, you cannot survive in any business if people don't trust you, if they know that what you say today will change tomorrow. People will not just want to do with you. And the morals, which is, I read the hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who says, whoever is not conscious of his neighbors he should treat your neighbor, your visitor, and everybody that you're dealing with, you should treat them well. Let them know you, and it's not an eye service. It should be. You should have a good moral dealings with people. Shouldn't just be somebody that people would just frown out at every time, and it's not part of your fasting and everything that you did. They are pointed to the core and the essence of our life, which is ethics, which is our ethics, our moral outstanding. Your fasting, your prayers, they are there to shape us into a better person. So these are things that we cannot just separate them and say, oh, in business, I want to be dealing with in this way. It's all about profit. If I can make money, and then it doesn't matter how I treat people as far as I'm making my money. No, you will find yourself at the receiving end, and you might be punished for it. Allahu Alam.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I pass over to Brother Samir to give his final remarks, please do write any questions you have in the chat box so we can address them before we wrap up the call. But until then, passing over to Brother Abdul Samir. Bismillah.
The way I'm going to summarize this is, I would say, when it comes to the subject of ethics and ethics in business and the responsibilities of Muslims in that debate or in that context, I think there is an urgent call to Muslims. There's a vacuum to be filled. And I think collectively, as human, as individuals, as Muslims, I think we're not rising up to the occasion. If you, as I said earlier, when it comes to ethics, is about the morality of what's wrong and what's right. And sometimes it's not as binary as you might think. There are a lot of factors at play when it comes to ethics. Do you have the self-interest, the external pressures, what consequences are there when you make those bad judgments, what threats are there, and most importantly, what's the human factor? The human factor, sometimes we created to be forgetful. Sometimes we make mistakes. So some bad ethical behaviors, some of them are unintentional. My point is, in light of all those factors, there are choices and there are consequences of doing the wrong thing. And you would say that, given the recent business scandals that there's been all over the news, talk about the Enron and the fraud, talk about the PPI, talk about the MP expenses scandal, talk about the Volkswagen diesel cheating, talk about the Tesco misrepresentation, talk about, just name it. And the question that comes to mind is, the West has one of the most rigorous business regime in terms of laws, rules, regulations, and most importantly, the implementation of those rules and regulations. Then I keep asking myself, so why then? Why do we continue to have this amount of unethical behaviors? I know the society is moving away from, there's a huge focus on what we call the triple B bottom line now. It's not just about the profit, it's about the people and the planet, the triple P, the people and the planet. There are some social investors that they will only invest in you based on how you can articulate your triple P. My point is, yes, in the conventional business world, you have the rules, you have the regulations, you have the ethics, the code of ethics. Some organizations that I've worked for or that I've consulted with, if they open their books of ethics, it's as big as this. Yet, the moral decadence in the organization is out of this world. Yet, the morality at the management level is nothing to write home about. But then, if you then move forward and you talk about Islam and the template for business, Allah Azza wa Jal, throughout the Quran, give guidance and decrees as to how we should be just in our business dealings, how we should not be corrupt or defraud other people, how we should treat one with fairness, how we should avoid bribery or any illegality. And the Prophet Azza wa Jal, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, also encourage us around how to be merciful when we are dealing with other people, because the Muslim or the people, we are a microcosm of the society that we live in. We don't live in isolation, right? Everything that happens has a ripple impact of something else. My point is, the conventional organized Western world has a lot of business ethics, yet we're having all these unethical behaviors. They have a lot of legal parameters and code of conduct. Yes, we're having all these issues. I cannot excuse the Muslim world as well. I'm not saying that, you know, in the Muslim land, you don't have unethical business behaviors. That's not true. We have a lot of unethical business behaviors in what you call Muslim land. Then the final question for me is really about, it's not just about the rules, the laws, the implementation of it. It boils down to the individuals and their spirituality and their tawakkul in Allah and their fear of Allah that is beyond who is seeing me right now. As I said to you earlier, it's about the factors. Some things could be legal, but unethical. Other things could be socially acceptable, but unethical. You know, you saw the Panama paper. You saw a list of companies on that list. These are one of the, you know, they have a way of navigating within the legality realm to still stay within the legal realm without necessarily falling out of it. My point is beyond the rules, is beyond the policies, is about the individual, and most importantly, our faith in Allah, that you know, we would be accountable for what we do as an individual and what we contribute to the overall bigger context of business in general. And I'll leave you with the word of Allah Azza wa Jalla, where Allah Azza wa Jalla said, Ba'da a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullah wa qulu qawlan sadida. O you who believe, fear Allah and say what's right. Is around being fearful of Allah and knowing that Allah Azza wa Jalla will hold us accountable for every single thing that we do, whether in your personal business conduct, whether in your organization that you work for. You know, you must be known as an ambassador for Islam, as someone that, you know, encapsulates and exemplifies all the morals and the dictates of doing business or being moral in Islam. And the final one is Allah said, يُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ أَعْمَالَكُمْ وَيَغْفِرُ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. And when you do that, when you fear Allah and you do what's right, Allah will bless your deeds. Not anymore would you have to be fearful of, am I going to lose my job if I'm not complicit in this immoral attitude? Not anymore do you have to think about, okay, I have to cheat the system. I have to pretend I'm sick when I'm not. I have to say, you know, I have to claim for disability when you're not disabled. There's a lot of immoral practices, some of which are attributed to Muslim, unfortunately. And Allah then said, وَيَغْفِرُ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ, and will forgive your sins, and whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, indeed, that is a successful individual. So,
Barakallahu feek. Alhamdulillah. I'd like to give a big thank you to both our speakers today. May Allah reward you immensely, bless you and your families and your trade. And inshallah, Allah preserve us all so that we're able to invite you back here to tackle further questions or further topics within our Muslims in Business series. Apologies to the audience. We did disable the chat box initially because of a earlier security breach which we've sorted. Alhamdulillah, you might have noticed that we implemented the waiting room system in order to combat that. I don't see any questions in the chat box, and actually we've gone slightly over our time. So inshallah, we'll be wrapping up here. You'd like Brother Lawal's contact? Okay, inshallah. I mean, both our brothers are part of the main Muslim platform group, inshallah. So I'm sure you can reach out to them on there, inshallah. Barakallahu feek. So subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Thank you once again for joining. Inshallah, we look forward to having you at our future programs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa